The real estate market is changing fast with some major proposals for mergers like Rocket Mortgage acquiring Redfin and Compass buying Home Services of America, which is a Berkshire Hathaway company. Today, we'll ask, do these big mergers impact home buyers and sellers in these transactions? And please, guys, drop a comment down below. Make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button so we can get this out to the veteran community. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Rocket Mortgage buying Redfin and what that means for you. Now, I think it's odd that a big mortgage company is going to purchase a real estate brokerage. And I say that because a lot of times they want to have those entities separate, because now when you have a mortgage company and a real estate company, they're going to be pushing their own products and they're not always beneficial for consumers. We see this all the time. And then another big piece of this is that a bigger the company is, the more money they need to spend to sustain its resources and marketing, which at the end of the day, just like any business, the higher your expenses are, normally that is passed on to consumers that are trying to leverage those products. Now, Redfin's model over the last, for a long time has been very different than the traditional real estate brokerage where they do regular commission splits. It brings in a lot more talent versus the way they've been doing it. So they've had a slowdown over the last couple of years with generating revenue and bringing in people. So I think it's an interesting move. Their platform is pretty great. I take a look at it. I use it as one of the platforms I use to search real estate. So in that sense, it's great. And, there's also positives that can come from this in the sense that it might streamline the process for, let's say, a consumer coming in to purchase a home, but wanting to know what their budget is, do it in real time. There may be more communication or integrated customer relationship management systems that can work together, which can be a positive piece. But I just think overall, right, from like a banking perspective and like a mortgage company and real estate brokerage, they typically want to see those separate. But in the recent years, we've seen a lot of real estate companies also start mortgage companies. Like Redfin does have a mortgage division of its own because, again, a lot of times they're trying to generate as much revenue as possible by providing their own services. And again, from what I've seen talking with people that have reached out online, this is my experience, is that it normally hasn't been a very good experience for them because a lot of times it's a call center or company folks that are working at some of the small brokerages have more flexibility and autonomy to be able to provide services, and it's more kind of like a one-on-one piece to that. Now let's switch gears and talk about Compass, which is a real estate brokerage buying Home Services of America, which is another real estate company, right? So bigger isn't always better, similar to like a mortgage company, because now you're taking on all those assets, or you're taking on all those payments, you're taking on all those people. And, real estate, right, traditionally is a 1099 job, unlike a mortgage job, which is the W-2 job. And Redfin's model was a W-2 model as well, where the traditional real estate brokerage is 1099 because they really have less control over what somebody does, maybe, let's say, the day-to-day outside of an overall arching, system that they have in place. So it's interesting that these companies are publicly traded, but they have independent contractors that work for them. So similar to like other companies that are out there that focus on providing services to the consumers, almost like having a third party being involved, right? So, or like a middle person to be able to broker the deal. So this is kind of like the same concept with that. Now, if they take them on, again, they're going to significantly increase in their size. So again, we have more cost associated with being able to do this merger, and nothing is free in life. So somehow that has to be paid for in either them generating more revenue, getting better splits for the company, because that's how the realtors normally will make their money, right, from their splits. Which brings me to another interesting piece of the real estate industry right now. Last year, we had the big NAR lawsuit with the top 5 real estate brokerages. And basically, I'm sure if you've looked at buying a house in the last 8 months or so since late 2024, the process has changed where buyers will negotiate with their agent on their commission split. or how they're going to pay the commission. And now sellers are not obligated, quote unquote, to pay that commission of a buyer's agent, and they have their own separate agreement. Okay, so when this was coming out, like it was crazy. People thought that this was going to be the end of real estate. Everything's going to change. Nothing has really changed. And what, again, this is from me reading articles and me talking with people that the same old rhetoric still exists, and they're still charging the same prices by saying there's standard fees, and there is no such thing as standard because it's all negotiable. So you have the relationship that you have with a realtor, and then that realtor has a relationship with their brokerage. So brokerages might be setting their prices to say, hey, this is what our fee is. And then, hey, agent, this is what you have to sell this because you work here. So those are things to be mindful of when you're going through this experience. And I'll tell you that it's already a process to buy a home, right? This is why I do the whole channel, to educate you on the VA loan, the home process, all the big changes that are happening. Because if you're not tracking that, then you could be just lost in the sauce. Like I just talked to somebody the other day. They're like, it's a very different process right now. Am I going to be okay to buy a home, especially with everything that's been happening? Plus, you had the complexity of will I have to pay more real estate commission fees? Like, what if the sellers don't pay? Those are things you need to be aware of when you're going into the transaction and how they write that contract. And I'm not an attorney. That's why you really need to review it, because if you don't review it correctly and know what options you have, then you could be losing at the end of the day. Now, let's talk about some past mergers. And I'm not going to go specifically into different companies, but just some lessons that have been learned. And they're not always very positive, right? Last year, top brokerages faced big losses, yet the real estate industry hasn't significantly changed, like we talked about, which I don't really foresee how this is going to get any better. I know that you have the multiple listing service. That's where realtors put in all the properties that they are listing into that system, so everybody has access to it. And then you have other, real estate companies that will take all that data and make it available to consumers, so you could look pretty much anywhere in the country, kind of like the Zillows of the world. They buy that data and publish it. And there's also a controversial piece of private listings, right? Where these networks of people using, let's say, realtors, but listing properties on a private network, it's gotten somewhat heated, because if they're listing those buyer agent fees to the buyer's side, that's causing a conflict of what was actually passed. So, but we've also seen a lot of bigger increase in consumers representing themselves both from a sell side and a buy side. Now, that's really up to you on what you want to do. Some people go with the tactic of, well, if it gets too complicated, I'll hire someone. And it's just like anything in life. If you don't do it every day, it can seem somewhat complicated, or it will be, because the industry itself is designed to withhold information. So you have to hire someone to be able to do it. That's like kind of like that's my piece on that. Now let's talk about using big brokerages versus small brokerages. I'm going to talk about both real estate and mortgage companies, and I'll talk a little bit about differences between using a broker or a bank, right? Because if you look at Rocket Mortgage, they're a brokerage type style. They're not federally chartered. They're not a state charter. They're a brokerage company. So let's just first start off with some of the understanding the big pieces and small brokerages, and kind of what the main differences are when it comes to the real estate piece. And this is my experience from what I've seen working with people across the country. So what I've noticed with bigger brokerages, they do offer a lot more resources and training for agents because they're much larger. So in essence, they're collecting more money to be able then to reinvest back into the people that they have. And then the way that they get paid varies widely depending on what brokerage you work with, if you get overrides, if you bring in agents, and the flexibility will go down with the bigger brokerage because they need to be able to sustain a certain amount of revenue. You have some companies that do 100% remote work, which is an interesting concept. But you have a lot of brokerages still right now that have large offices that they utilize. And again, all of that needs to be paid for somehow. Now, if you talk to a smaller brokerage, and some people will start off in a smaller brokerage, some will start off working at big institutions, learn everything, get all the training, and then they'll transfer to a smaller one because it gives them more flexibility on what they can do, right? It might be a much smaller office of, let's say, maybe 5 to 20 people, where it's a bit more intimate. You have flexibility in how much you can charge. And the amount of information that you have may be somewhat limited because you're just not getting as much training, or you have to be able to rely that on your own. Now, most of these agents will have access to the MLS just like anybody else is. They have subscription models with them, so they can still show you all the properties like everybody else. They can still help you draft to fill in a contract and get that out to the community. Where they may lack, where a bigger brokerage might be a bit more beneficial, is they may have like off-listing properties, right? So let's say within that real estate brokerage, they say, hey, we have a property coming on the market. We're not going to publish it to the public, but internally, hey, agents, we have a seller that wants to sell this home. First dibs on there. So that is a positive piece of that. Now, when it talks to mortgage companies using banks and brokers, it varies widely. And I get that question all the time. Is that should I be focusing in on working with a big bank or a big brokerage? It's really going to depend on your experience. And I'm going to talk through a couple of things because I've worked at both big places and small places, banks and brokerages. And I used to have my own brokerage as well. And so there's a lot of pieces that go within that, okay? So one main thing that you want to know is what your experience is going to be like in the home buying process. If you want a call center experience where they're just basically going to, if you go to them, say, hey, I want to get a mortgage, and they say, okay, here is a mortgage to give you. And then you just kind of left then to kind of figure out a lot of the stuff on your own. That's been the experience that I've heard from people. And just because a company specializes in a certain loan product, right? I'm talking company wide. It doesn't mean that it's going to be that good. Because again, the bigger the company is, the more they need to pay, right? It's just a business model, right? So if you have more people that you have to spend a ton of money on marketing, you consumer, you are going to be the one that pays for that marketing. It's not free again. So call centers cost a lot of money, but in general, everything is kind of expensive. And then on the flip side, and communication is going to be a big difference because call centers, you're talking to different people all the time. You can't just be like, hey, can I get your cell phone number? And then I'm going to text you on a Saturday in the evening because we're making an offer and we need help. Because that's when I'm getting text messages, right? It's not like during banking hours where 9 to 5 people are making offers. It's normally evenings and weekends when you found that dream home that you want to make an offer on. Okay, so that experience also is going to vary widely, and knowing if somebody actually does understand the VA loan. You can watch the channel and you guys will get a lot of little snippets, but an easy one to test somebody if they really know what they're doing is what the utility cost for a VA home loan is for your residual income. I know that was probably like over a lot of people's heads, but essentially the VA looks at net income to qualify for a VA loan, okay? There's one little thing that people need to know when it comes to understanding how that utility costs affect that residual income. And what lenders forget to do, because I see this, is they forget to apply this 14 cents per square foot on your home as a deduction in your residual income. So if you just ask someone like, hey, is there any type of like utility reduction that needs to happen with my residual income? If they tell you no, there isn't, then like they don't do VA loans enough to be able to help you to get to where you need to be. Okay. On the flip side, you have smaller places like brokerages. Then they may have a lot more flexibility to be able to help you with different loan programs that exist. Like for us, even the place I work at, we have a lot of variety of products that we offer. But myself, I love to work with the veteran community. I'm a veteran myself, and I want to be able to give you the best care and advice and at least be able to do what you want to do, not what I want to do. because a lot of times people in general just get steered into different things. I would feel against their own will, but they may think like, oh, this person has my best interest. But a lot of times I feel like they don't, because we will talk with consumers and then we'll be like, hey, this is the opposite. Like, take a look at how this works, so you can make the best decision for you and what you're trying to do. So as we navigate the real estate component, ever-changing landscape, make sure that you guys position yourself with knowledge, and then with that knowledge you'll be able to apply it. You can also connect with myself and my team. Happy to walk you through that process no matter what stage you're in. Take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you guys soon.